Hello everybody, how's it going? It's me, Krendor, and welcome back to Krendor Talks in front of a shitty green screen. Today, I'm talking about why I like Warhammer, specifically the hobby. Because a lot of people like Warhammer, right? I have a lot of streamer and YouTube friends even that are like, you know what, I love the Warhammer video game, I love the Warhammer lore, but when it comes to the actual hobby part, a lot of them are like, oh, I don't have time, or it's too much, or it costs too much, or it's the, or whatever it might be, right? Um, and I was trying to think, why do I love it so much? You know what I mean? Because it always feels like I'm weird because I'm like so into it, right? I got into Warhammer when I was 12 or 13, and one of my friends got like the old Warhammer, which edition? Sixth edition? I want to say sixth edition fantasy. And they had orcs versus Bretonians or humans or something, whatever starting box that was in like 2002. And they were like, oh, if you want to play with us, you should go get some too. So I was like, all right. And I went, and of course I got the lizard men and they were just metal, and I didn't know how to build these metal things. I didn't know anything, man. I was just like, these are just metal lizards. But in my mind, these were amazing, right? Because I think when you're growing up, you're playing with action figures, you're playing with, little army men, and you're like, boo, 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 right? Little micro machine guys. Like, I had micro machine Star Wars guys. And then I think you hit this point where you're starting to become a teenager, and you start being like, I'm starting to be like an adult now, right? And, you start kind of pushing all those things aside, right? You start growing up being like, you know what, I don't play with action figures anymore. I don't do all these things, right? And I think Warhammer was kind of like that bridge for me, because you are still playing with these little action figure guys, these little army men, but now it's become a lot more, I guess, intricate, because, you have to build them, you have to paint them, you gotta, do all these little different things, and it's a lot more, you would say, adult, with like this, big war theme. There's blood, there's gore, there's like, dark themes behind a lot of this stuff, and so you're like, okay. And I think, I think a lot of that is what really got me interested. Plus, it's just lizard men walking around with weapons, right? Like, listen, it's literally dinosaurs riding dinosaurs, as they say. But fast forward to 2019, and I was getting back into classic WoW. And, it made me think of Warhammer. And I was like, you know what? Let's go do it. Let's go build some Warhammer, right? Now that I have an adult brain, somewhat, I'm going to be able to actually do this. And so, getting back into it and actually kind of reliving that nostalgia, it like sparked something in me. You know what I mean? And so I expected this to just be like some one-off nostalgic thing, right? I did this with like a Lego thing. I was like, I'm going to build a Lego. And I built like a little Lord of the Ring Lego thing. And I was like, that was fun. Right? But I did that, and I was like, I love this. You know what I mean? It was like just sitting there and like clipping out all the stuff and then actually gluing it together and seeing it all come to fruition. It was kind of like, putting a puzzle together, right? It is that same type of mentality behind it of like, oh, I just built this puzzle. That's really cool. And so when you build these miniatures, it's like you start with everything on this sprue, and you clip it all out, and you put it together, and then you're like, wow, I just built this thing, right? And then you're like, well, now I can paint it. So then you prime it, and then you learn how to paint. So you get into an entire different, process of the hobby part. And then you get, you learn how to paint, you get better at painting. So now you've gone from essentially building a puzzle to painting something, right? You're getting very artistic here. You're actually painting a model and bringing it to life, right? You're adding color and depth and vibrancy and all these stuff, and you bring it to life, right? And then once you do that, you're like, oh, well, now I can play the game. Now, you don't have to play the game, right? There's plenty of people, they just build and paint and that's it. But if you know me, I love competitive multiplayer games, and so my brain is like, competitive multiplayer game. And I really wanted to play back in the day, but I was also, 12 or 13. Warhammer Fantasy was, the instruction manuals like that thick. I don't know what was going on, right? I don't know if I still know what was going on. But it was just, it was like another thing of like, wow, now I can actually learn how to play the game. Like I remember playing the game in my head back then. I would just be like, yeah, lizard guy, like you're playing with action figures, right? But now, I was already into Blood Bowl, so I knew all about dice rolling and either loving the game or hating myself, one of the two. So I was already ready to go, and so that just kind of topped it off, right? It was like now I can play games with these guys that I've built and painted, and it just kind of wrapped it all together. And then on top of that, after getting into the game and playing, you start going to your local game store and you meet people and socializing, and you're like, wow, these people are the same as me. They wanted to build and paint. And I think when I first thought of it, a lot of times you think of like game stores as like the right, like the people that are just like actually Space Marines are, you know what I mean, like that type of thing. But for the most part, I'd say like 95% of the people are just like really cool normal people that have like a similar thing where maybe they really are trying to reconnect with their childhood of like playing with action figures and just having a fun time of like playing with these goofy guys, right? Some people really do like the competitive aspect of it. They're just like, what, I don't even care about building or painting. I'm just buying armies. I just want to play the game because it is like a board game, right? A lot of people love board games, and this is just another type of board game. It's a much more complex process to play the board game, and there's a lot to learn, but once you really get into it, it's a ton of fun, and there's so many different rules and so many different armies and so many different things going on, that that's an entire thing in itself. And so I think that's why I want a lot of people tell me like, oh, you can just play it on Tabletop Simulator. To me, that's like, it's such a shallow part of it, right? I don't think it's bad. Obviously not everybody has a local game store they can go to. Not everybody has the funds to be able to buy a bunch of the stuff, or some, obviously there are roadblocks, and I think to have that option is fantastic. But for me personally, it's a little bit of everything, because the building and the painting to me helps with my creative outlet, and I think being able to play with the things I've built and painted feels almost like an accomplishment. And then you can show other people like, look, I built and painted this, it was pretty cool. And then you feel a little more attached to the actual models that you have when you've actually put all this work into them, and then you get to play with them, and you're like, yeah, he killed a fire slayer. I don't know. And so I think all these things combined, just the hobbying part of like kind of building a puzzle and, putting these things together, and then actually painting and doing this creative outlet activity, and then, being able to play the game in like a multiplayer sense, and then being able to just connect with other people and socialize, which, as humans, that's pretty much what you want to do as a human, is socialize and connect with people with similar interests, right? And I think it's just, you combine all those things, and I think that's really why. And I was like, I guess that seems why I'm so into this, right? It's taken all the things that I really do appreciate and just combine them into one big hobby, and it's fantastic. And so that's it. Right? And I think a lot of people get a little too caught up on the fact of like, oh, I need to become like the best painter, right? Or like, I'm not that good at the game, and so I don't want to play the game because I got to learn it. Or like, if I do learn it, I'm not that good. Like if you learn League of Legends or something, right? Maybe you're like, what, I'm only gonna be bronze, so I may as well not play, right? But I think that's not the way to go about it. I think it's just, if you want to do it, just do it, right? And you're not trying to win any awards yet. I don't know. But for the most part, most people aren't trying to win any painting awards. Most people aren't trying to win any tournaments. If you're like trying to learn how to play a competitive game, you're usually going to probably find more people that are on your skill level than people that are at like tournament level, right? That ends up being like the top 1% or like the top 5% of players. Like there's a bunch of players out there, you know what I mean? And so there's also other people learning, right? You can learn with them. It's just, I think it's actually, especially now where so many more people are getting into the hobby, like it's grown exponent. Like it's been insane. Even since I started this YouTube channel like 3 or 4 years ago or whatever it was. it's blown up. Like, ever since I got back into Warhammer, it's been crazy. So, and I think that is part of the reason, people growing up and seeing how many different aspects to the hobby there are, and kind of having that nostalgia feeling of looking back and, being a kid and being able to, like, play with your action figures and, like, chill out and just, like, turn your brain off and, like, paint and stuff. You know what I mean? So, let me know why you got into the hobby, or why you haven't, and, you're, maybe it's, monetary reasons or whatever it might be. Just let me know down in the comments section below, and I'd like to hear what you got to say. So thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, and I have to go paint my dank Trog boss, or whatever he's called. My dank hold Trog boss, that's what it is. Okay. See ya.